I mean, it's good. I didn't know if that was sort of a tongue-in-cheek type deal, but it was needed, and it was a great assessment, by Coach in terms of, understanding something. There's reality, right, and humility, and those are two really important qualities for guys to understand. And sometimes they live outside of reality, and they need a dose of humility. And so, no, I think it's been solid, this week, in terms of effort. A lot of things to clean up. Trying to put them in some tough situations, with some different calls, just so I think it'll help us later, and for them to feel, a heavy dose of stress, maybe more than I usually do in spring, even to that first group. And it's good. I think they need to feel it. They need to feel, getting beat and, playing light boxes and doing some different things in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, has its ups, has its downs, but that's spring.
With the leadership you lost in the square and Jones on the inside, as far as the being leaders on the defensive side, who's going to pick up the banner and run with it, per se?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week, right? In terms of, it's going to be a shared deal, across a lot of guys. And, we always bring up certain names and certain guys. And, hey, listen, it's not that easy. Everybody just thinks you just walk in and you step in and, you're a leader. And we talk about a lot of time, what does that mean, right? Hey, what does that mean? And some guys are leaders some of the time. Are you really a leader if you only do it some? Is to be a leader, do you have to do it all the time? I mean, there's a lot of depth to that. And what we're looking for is consistency. Consistency of action, consistency of play, how you react to adversity, all that plays a part. And I think it's a learning process. I mean, we're still, we're learning as coaches. Don't get it twisted, in terms of, we put a lot on these guys and they're 18 to 22 years old. And it's on us too as coaches to show them the example and what it's like. And, if we got to be consistent as coaches, consistent in terms of how we coach. Are we the same person every day, or are we really high and excited some days and we're really down a level? Well, then how are we asking our players to do the same thing? So we got to look at ourselves first. And so just to throw it on the players, but yeah, do you want a player-led team? Absolutely you do. And I think we've got guys, but no different than the playbook. They're learning what leadership looks like, and they anything in the learning process, you've got to get corrected. Sometimes it's harsher than other moments. But I'm not, I think we've talked about guys and names, but I don't need to keep bringing them up, because then whether they get too much pressure or too much credit, whatever. So they know what they've got to do, and the guys that need to step up.
Up front last year, it felt like towards the end of the season, Joe Hassab wasn't as a part of that rotation as maybe earlier on. Has he responded? How's he developed? Is he a guy that looks like he can?
Yeah, Joe's one that I challenged heavily this offseason. And he knows it, and he's not going to back down. I expect a guy that's been in the program this long, to be clean, to know their assignments, to know what to do, to play with great effort, to strain every down. That is understood, and quite frankly, Joe hadn't done that. And so there was a big challenge for him this offseason. He understood that. And he has responded in spring in a way that's exciting. But here's the deal. It can't just be whatever we're on practice 8 or, 8 practices. It's not. That's if you think about 8 practices in season, that's 2 games. I want to see it from that guy the entire spring through summer, you know, and he knows that, and we're gonna keep the pressure on him. But he has responded, and he's a guy that we need to be in there, and a guy that we need to help us because he's got size and twitch and experience. So he just needs to keep pushing. But proud of how we reacted. Because listen, I've been in my career, a lot of guys have reacted poorly to those conversations. They go into a corner, they sulk, they point. It's someone else's fault. Oh, coach is being too hard on me. He looked at the film and he realized, hey, listen, that's nobody's fault but my own. What you put on film, you put on film. And so.
Brian, what was working for Zion late in the year that really clicked for him, and how much of that is just getting used to, you know, a stronger level of competition than he did last year?
No, you know, I think some of that's got to be a question for him, right? You know, in terms of, you know, how he felt. I just think he gained a comfort level within the system. He was around a strong group of guys that, you know, when you have a Ty Asian and Jalen Geiger and Jordan Lovett, you know, who he'd been in the system for a year at the time, but you know, they were able, and they embraced him quickly, and so then he felt comfortable, you know, to sort of mature within the system. You know, it's that old deal, like, hey, you know, you get a quarterback that, you know, with the first pick of the draft, right? And do you want to just throw him to the wolves and maybe he gets to score, or do you want a guy that can just grow under somebody? And I think translating for Zion, like, he didn't feel like he just had to be thrust into day one starting role, and now he gained confidence, you know, through the reps he got. Then he got more. Then he was starting by the end of the season, and now that confidence is just sort of through the roof right now, and so we need to keep it there. And but I'm really pleased with where he is, and you know, there are things that we need to continue to work on with him, and he understands that. You know, from a technique, from man, some of that kind of stuff. But you know, he's shown a great willingness to tackle. You know, even at Texas State, the thing that got me really excited is he had a penchant for ball production. You know, stripping, punching. He's got a natural feel for that, and so, you know, we need that kind of playmaker on the field to create some turnovers for us.
On Saturday, you're going to have the fans here. Is there any way to predict how players might react with that differently in practice? Or do you try to?
Nope.
Just
No way. I don't have my dice under here. Just roll them and see what we got. But no, there's no way to predict. You know, it's funny. We talk as coaches, and you go round and round, and you're like, okay, sometimes you over coach or over hype, and you know, you try to get them, and you feel like in the meeting room before you go out to that kind of practice, like you got them juiced and ready, and maybe you did too much early because then they get out to the practice field and there's a letdown. But then you feel like if you don't do it and then they go out and they're flat, you're like, I should have juiced them up. So you deal with that balance. Again, when you're 18 to 22 years old, you don't know what they're dealing with, you know, what happened that morning, you know, if they ran out of Lucky Charms and they had to eat Frosted Flakes and now they're in a bad mood, you just don't know. But hopefully I think there'll be good competition. I think, you know, you get to this point in camp, there's sort of a natural chippiness in competition, and they don't want to lose their one-on-ones, and so I think, but they got to play composed.
I asked earlier about Hayes. Dinkins was kind of the opposite, where he was a younger guy who really kind of flashed at the end of the season. How are you trying to get him to build on that, and what kind of is the next step for a young guy like that?
Consistency. You know, that's the big thing with Dink is consistency. And I heard a really good word yesterday that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to steal that. Repeatability. Right, and that's what it is at this level. You know, a lot of guys see flashes, and that's big in recruiting, or that's big from a media perspective. They see a guy flash, and now there's this huge excitement. But at this level, and even at the next level, right, it's the repeatability of that flash talent, right? And that's where that consistency piece comes in, and we need him to be consistent in his technique in those moments where he uses that length and he uses his body and his the twitch that he has within his body. So that's the big thing for him.
One of the problems last year, I think you all addressed it and talked about, is that the pass rush getting to the quarterback and all. Have you seen any improvement in that? This practice going on?
You know what?
Identified an individual for that?
They haven't let us tackle the quarterbacks yet. We don't have a single one yet. We don't have one. So I don't know if that, maybe that makes it worse. You know what? I think spring ball and fall camp, you can get a false sense of security or hope, or you're like, oh, this is going to be the year, like, because you go against the same tackles, protections, like you can do some things, and I think sometimes you can feel like you're in a better situation than you are. So that's something I've had to learn, you know, in terms of, you know, I'm not going to fall into that trap. We're going to see when Saturday's coming to fall.
What do you think about your pro day guys?
I thought they all performed well. You know, I thought it was a great turnout. It was a exciting day for those guys. I thought they did a solid job.
Okay,
You
folks,
know,
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I say Tony gave me the but no, again, I wish it was more up to me, you know, in those choices, because I love every one of those guys, especially defensively. I think they're going to help some team. All they need is a shot. Thanks.